Sure you don't know where the tablespoon is?
Is it sitting out someplace? I don't. I'm going to get it
You don't know where the tablespoon is?
I think I set that out on purpose so I wouldn't lose it. Anyways, okay, so the recipe that I found for biscuits is, so you start with 2.5 cups of flour. So then this is a teaspoon and a half, or 2 teaspoons and a half of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of salt. And then you do 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then you mix that together. And then the part that I found, and so this is sort of a combination of a bunch of different recipes, but the thing that I found that supposedly makes all the difference is you have to freeze the butter, and then instead of cubing it, and it's 1 stick of butter, but instead of cubing it, you're supposed to grate it with like a regular grater, and then supposedly that like incorporates it better once you like put it in. I think it keeps it from all melting. So the reason I left that in the freezer is, I guess, if you take it out too soon, it'll start to melt right away, so you kind of have to do this not ridiculously quick, but it's also a thing too that you're not supposed to like work the dough too much with your hands once you kind of get going, because it'll start to melt the butter. Okay, and then you just kind of work it together. And so I think the idea is this is basically the same thing as using a pastry knife, like it kind of results in the same thing. I think though that grating it, what that does is it means that you have to work it less to get it incorporated into the flour, because you kind of want it to be that consistent where it's like pellety. It just means that you can do it faster, I think is the idea, and then the butter melts less. And then you make a little well for yourself. And the next step is you want 3/4 of a cup of milk and 1 egg. Mix those together. And so this is something that, this part I think Rob is going to really love, where the recipe that I found calls for a specific number of stirs to get the dough done. Which that was 15. The other thing that they said was that what ruins biscuits is overworking the dough, because it causes, what is it, like the protein starts to do stuff. 15. Perfect. Completely terrible dough.
You're going to mess it up. You're going to throw more milk in and you're going to screw it all up.
Yeah, with flour though, you have to do that because like that might just mean that it's dry in here. Now, next step is getting like a floured work surface. So I'm just going to kind of wipe this off, throw some flour down on it. And then you are supposed to knead it a little bit just to kind of get it together and do like a consistent blob, especially since in my case I had a little bit more milk to it to get it to come together. Yeah, so then you just kind of want to knead it until it's smooth and then stop right away. Oh, you know what? Something else that I saw in a recipe that I didn't do is they also suggested chilling the flour. So that's kind of come together now into like a nice dough. Now here comes the other thing that I saw from a recipe that's kind of a neat trick. So to get the layering, what they suggested doing is you roll it out to about the thickness where you're going to want to cut it, which is like a 1/2 to 1/4 inch, just kind of depending on what recipe you read and what person said what. So about that thick, and then you fold it over on itself, you turn it, and you do it again.
Just to put this in perspective, Cody spent a good chunk of time this morning watching YouTube videos.
I did. I watched a bunch of different ones. I watched a really embarrassing video for how to make biscuits and gravy, because the guy like talked like a crazy person from the South. He's like, now we're gonna make some biscuits. First, you'll get some bacon. You gotta put bacon in it. I'm like, this is a weird tutorial for how to make sausage gravy. So anyways, I think I did about 4 times there, which is what one recipe called for. And then you're just supposed to kind of roll it out to, like I said, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And then they used a biscuit cutter, but I don't have one, so I'm using a cup. And then you just cut up your biscuits. There were a ton of variations on this. Like one of the ones that I saw, they used a different kind of flour because it has lower gluten protein, which is supposed to make it tenderer, but So it makes it less of the consistency of bread and more of the consistency of a biscuit. And then some people use self-rising flour and then omitted the baking soda, or baking powder rather. And also I've seen a lot of recipes that involve cream of tartar, but none of those have ever turned out very good for me, so I didn't do any of those. So now here's another thing that there was some inconsistency on. A lot of people didn't, like, whether you spread out the biscuits or you don't, it seemed to make sense to me to put them all together, because it supposedly helps each other rise then. Okay, so then the next thing that you want to do before you bake them is you put an egg wash on the top, and that causes them to get crispier on the top and then like goopier in the inside, which is what you want. You're supposed to use a brush. I don't have a brush, so I just use my fingers and I'm gross. Oh yeah, and since the hope is that Rob and Sarah is going to watch this video, and I'm sure they're going to ask, I did wash my hands. Alright, then you throw them in there and it says 10 to 15 minutes that you're supposed to bake them for.
On?
Oh, 400 degrees.
400.
Now the next part is the sausage gravy. So this one is going to be a little bit more... I didn't really use a recipe exactly for this one. The biscuits I basically used a recipe for and just kind of changed a few details. This one is kind of combining some good ideas that I saw a bunch of people use. So the way that I'm going to do it is, first of all, you brown the sausage, and I also threw a couple strips of bacon in there. I saw someone else do that, and it makes a lot of sense because there's fat in bacon that tastes good, so I'll use that to make the roux once we get to that point. So I guess the first little part here is just showing that we're throwing bacon in there as an extra, and then we'll start again once we actually get this to a point where it's almost browned. This is all browned now, and I'm going to put a little bit of cooking wine in it, which none of the recipes that I saw really called for it, but there's a bunch of stuff burned onto the bottom of the pan, and that'll probably taste really good, so I'm going to try to kind of get that up with the cooking wine. It'd probably help if I had a metal spatula, but meh. And that is the biscuits probably being done. I was looking at them as they were going, and I'm kind of having to... They didn't brown on top as much as I would have liked, and I'm probably going to pull them out before they do, just because I'd rather them be not as burnt on top and not be overly dry. Alright, that's pretty good. And the next thing I'm going to add to this is a half a small white onion. I also saw people do red, and then a bunch of garlic. So we're going to throw that in there and let that kind of cook around. And that was another thing that some people did and some people didn't, but I usually like onion and stuff, so, and especially garlic too, I like and stuff, so. Let's see how our biscuits look. Well, that's not terrible. Yeah, I mean, they definitely browned a little bit on top, but like I said, I don't want those to get burnt on the inside, so I'm just going to pull them out now, because they look really good. But those are the best looking biscuits I've ever made, I think. Those are pretty good.
They look very good.
They puffed up. Alright, so now I'm just going to kind of let this cook around for a little bit. So this is something that I kind of saw somebody do, and I don't know if he was doing it on purpose, but I know Rob has talked about before, and I think it's a good idea in this case. I'm going to try to make it's like a burnt roux, where you make a roux by mixing flour and any kind of fat, so you can make it with butter a lot of times. And it's thickening, basically. So it's just a way to thicken sauce. So this is another time where I don't have an exact measurement for how much flour to put in. I kind of eyeball it. But in this case, I'm going to let the roux cook for a little bit and let it get a little bit burnt, because it kind of gives it a different taste. And the other thing with roux, too, which I actually probably just screwed up a little bit, is you don't want to add too much flour at once or it ends up tasting really floury. And I probably even put in too much there at once. And the nice thing about roux that I found out is if you ever screw it up, which I have done before, where I like thin it out too much or something like that, you can always just like melt butter in a bowl, throw some flour in it, mix it up, and then mix it into whatever you're making if you want to thicken it. Because I've had to do that before when I've like made a sauce that was way too thin. Okay, yeah, so now I'm going to kind of just let that cook for a little bit and see if it can get a little bit like browned. So it's sort of hard to tell, but I think the roux started to change color and it smells a little bit different, so I'm going to just go for it here. So this is once again something where I saw a few discrepancies on how to do this, and I'm going to kind of mix a few things together. You can use basically anything at this point to thicken the sauce, like any liquid, and it will thicken. A lot of people, though, especially when it was like the how to make this real good biscuits and gravy, they all suggested using like whole milk or half and half, and we have skim milk, and really that'll be fine. Like, doesn't matter that much. But the solution to that is to throw a little bit of cream in there, just so it gets a little bit of a richer taste, I guess. So that'll make it kind of maybe 2% milk. I don't know. And then here's the part where I hope I didn't put in too much flour, because otherwise I won't be able to thin this down in this size of pan.
You want to talk about how we tried a biscuit?
Oh yeah, we tried the biscuits. Well, I guess you should probably give the critique. You're going to be more objective than I am, right?
That's true. They were very good. They're very flaky, very buttery, and we did add butter. But just very good. I mean, I don't really have anything else to say. They were good.
Okay, so it's starting to kind of get to where it's not thickening up as fast, which probably means we're hitting the point where this is going to be the amount of gravy that we have. So I'm going to throw in some seasonings. So I'm going to do oregano, thyme, and then a bunch of black pepper. And then, this is something that I'm sure me and Mandy will both like, a little bit of cayenne pepper as well. That was another one that I saw some people do and some people not do. But, given how we are with hot food, I think we'll like it. So then, this is now kind of at a good consistency. It's probably actually boiling a little bit too much. But, so the last thing that I saw people do is just a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. So, I'll see if that helps at all. I saw like 3 or 4 people do it online, so I'm going to give it a shot and see if it's good. And that's it. We're done. Hopefully this turns out into good food. I think that I may have made this a little too spicy.
Well, for us, that's okay.
Yeah. It'll sell Mandy on it.
Woo.
Woo! Biscuits and gravy.
Looks good.